Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this special episode of the School Leadership Show. In this episode, I partnered with the New York State Council of School Superintendents and their cabinet committee to offer this Coffee and Conversations, which is a thing that NYSCOSS, or the Council of School Superintendents in New York State, offers as a benefit to its cabinet members. So in this particular conversation, we focused on how to bring joy and find joy in your work. And we kind of get off into a little bit of self-care, but it turned into a really cool conversation, kind of a holiday edition of a professional conversation related to how we all approach our work as cabinet level leaders in K-12 school districts in New York State and potentially beyond. So I hope you enjoy this special episode, and I really appreciate and thank my friends from the New York State Council of School Superintendents for partnering and for doing this work together. And there'll be other opportunities to share some really cool content that we have coming out of that group. So enjoy the show. So welcome to Cabinet and Coffee Holiday Edition. So here we are after Thanksgiving, entering the holiday season. Oh, by the way, Lori, it's probably the only place colder than where I am right now is probably where you are, maybe Tim. Greetings from Canastota. I'm halfway between Rochester and Albany right now. So I stopped near the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Who knew, right? So today's topic, we're going to talk about joy and kind of getting at that whole idea of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because Lynn kind of alluded to it. This is a busy time of year. It's a busy time of life. It's a busy time in K-12. So my first question I'm going to put out there is, where are you finding small amounts of joy in your work right now? Like, what are some of the things that when it feels really crappy, like that you can kind of take a look at and say, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Anybody want to go first? All right, I'll go totally cold call. I am not above that.
Yeah, Mike, I'll go first. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Holtzman. I'm Assistant Superintendent of Great Neck. I work with Ken Bossert, for those that are familiar with Ken. So a perfect example was actually last night, Mike. There was an event at South High School. We have two high schools, two middle schools, and an alternate school. So at South High School, we have an observatory, which I was unaware of. I've been in the district for 9 years. I was the principal. Now I'm in this position. And a question came up over the summer about whether or not the observatory was functional. And I didn't know. So I reached out to the science chair and I said, I asked the question and she said, yes. I said, well, what do you think about maybe doing like a community event, maybe inviting the elementary school kids and their parents to, the observatory one night. So fast forward, it was supposed to be Tuesday, but the weather was bad. So we did it last night. We had 52 elementary school students come with their parents. And there are a series of stations that they went to, and one of them was the observatory. It was a crystal clear night, very powerful telescope. The acoustics in the observatory are very similar to that of the Capitol, where if you're whispering in one corner, it sounds like the person standing next to you. It's very cool. And all the kids got a sneak peek at the moon. And it was awesome. And in another area of the school in the gym, they had this inflatable igloo kind of structure, but up on the ceiling was a projection of all the constellations, all the stars with the names and whatnot. And while I was in there, I put on Us and Them by Pink Floyd. Kind of reminded me of being in the planetarium. It was really cool. And that was at 6:15, 6:30 last night. It was here yesterday morning at 6:30. It was a long day, but yet kind of just being there and being with the little guys and just seeing how much fun they were having, and just it was really energizing, even after, with everything going on, little things like that really make a big difference.
Very cool, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, what a cool thing to have in a district too, by the way.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, the top of the dome shifts. It's electronic, and you move it based upon the position of the stars and the moon. So, it was amazing. Yeah.
Nice, very nice. Anybody else?
Good morning, everyone. Lori Torville from FEH, and yes, Mike, very cold. It's -7 right now. Mine is just more general. I think the older I've gotten, the more I've become comfortable with not expecting big wins, like big changes, like big things to happen. I definitely have come to very much appreciate when we have little wins, and they're all over the place. I think sometimes we forget them and don't pay as much attention to them, and I think they're important because all those little wins oftentimes add up to some of our bigger wins. So I'm always very appreciative when I recognize or see some of those little wins. And sometimes you got to look really hard for those, but it's important.
Yeah. So, Lori, I want to push on that a little bit. So, do you have any sort of habits or like things that you do to sort of orient yourself to look for those things? Because I think sometimes you like you said, you almost have to force it to find, but then it becomes a habit. But like, well, how do you do it?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is my morning. I used to be a high school principal. So when you're a high school principal, you're very visible. You're always in the hallway, you're always out, everybody knows you, you're seen. That just becomes ingrained in you. When I stepped into this role, I was stuck behind my desk. But I made myself stuck behind the desk. I always came in and got into my emails. And then after you get into one email, an hour and a half is gone and you haven't left your office. So for the last few years, I've definitely made it a priority and a habit not to do my emails in the morning. The first thing I do is go upstairs and watch the kids come in. And where the kids are coming in also are the instructors hanging around. And those type of informal conversations with the staff in our building definitely is a variety of small wins, right? Because you're creating these more personal connections with your staff. And I missed seeing kids and being involved in kids, and I don't have the same involvement, but it is still really nice to have a young person say good morning to you, or you say good morning to them. And then when you run into them later on in a program, you start making those connections. So that has helped me personally feel a little bit more connected as I have moved into this role. So that's the first thing I thought of, is just forcing myself into making a new habit that would put me in a position to recognize those things more. And in those conversations, I'm also hearing informally what staff's doing. That's where you oftentimes hear good things they have going on.
Yeah. And it is the kind of, and I'm sure everybody on this call felt it, right? Like if you worked in a building before you went to central office, I tell people it was like becoming a dog. Like I used to, when I was a principal, I'd walk around all the time, moving all the time. But when I went to central office, I would sit, then I'd get up and walk and go sit someplace else. Then I get up and I go walk and sit someplace else and maybe eat, right?
Right.
But yeah, like to do that and to force it. And then you do that enough. And then if someday when you're not there, people are wondering where you are.
Exactly.
Then you know you've made it, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Anybody else have a habit or a sort of like a tactic that you sort of trick yourself into looking for moments of small wins?
This is Heather. I'm from the Beacon City School District. I agree. I like sit at my desk and then I run to a crisis. Sit at my desk, run to a crisis. So I think the holidays, I get a lot of exercise, I feel like. But I think one thing that I do by habit, and it's actually very natural for me to do, is I just walk around anywhere and thank somebody for what they're doing. And I force myself to send a gratitude card almost every day to somebody in the district. And then also being very mindful of greeting people by name. And that is really important. And I'm going to say that feels like a little win, but for the person who's receiving it, it feels like such a win. And then I take the compliment without shying away from it, which is really hard for me. I'm like, oh no, not me. Like I'm not all the things, but when they do, and sometimes they compliment me for things I have not done. And I'm like, thank you for providing that feedback. I'll take that compliment. So I think it's the giving the gratitude. I was just talking to a staff member this morning. The more gratitude we give out, the more that's returned to us. And I'm grateful for even one a day.
I love it. And I have a colleague who I started to do this. I watched her do it in a meeting. She carries like, I don't know, 3 or 4 blank cards with her all the time, like puts them like with her pad. And then if something happens in the meeting or whatever, and somebody does something cool, she writes it right then.
Yeah.
And then like when she gets back to her office, sends it. So I started doing that. And then you don't forget, because it's the kind of thing where like, oh, I should, and then you get busy and don't do it.
So one other just highlight I just want to share is I print all of my staff name, which is it's a big district, on cards, because the one that's left at the end of the year that I did not say something to is probably the one who needs it the most. So it just reminds me there are people I say thank you to all the time, and then there's those I don't. So before the year starts, I print with all the names on them. And then as I'm working through the year, I make the intention to go find Bob, the person who mows the lawn. So it forces me.
That is cool. Which you think about it, right? That's a strategy we often use in schools, right? The whole, we put all the kids' names up and all the adults go in and we make sure that every kid has some sort of adult connection. So I love it. Any other ones, any other practices or tactics that people have found effective for engaging in this type of work?
Mike, I am a big proponent of the handwritten note. And I think at least once a week, if you take a half hour to just pick a couple of people in a district that you can recognize through a short handwritten note, it goes a long way over even just sending an email to them. It's an artifact that they can hold on to and keep and refer back to. And it's really uplifting for you to be able to sit and reflect and write and remind yourself of the goodness that's going on in your district. So I actually have a document where I keep track of all the people that I've written to so that I'm not like consistently writing to the same people over and over again. And I try to hit as many as possible. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail, but it's a really good way. We have a portrait of a graduate in our school district. It's also a good, it sounds cheesy, but we talk to the teachers about recognizing kids for our 6 attributes over the course of the school year. So I also try to like work in one of the attributes and talk about like why I see them exemplifying that in their practice. So that absolutely works for me, especially this time of year.
I love it. And I love, you, Tim and Heather, like the idea of being really purposeful about it, like wrapping a system around it. Like that, one of the lovely things about our bureaucracy, right? We can create systems to get big things done. So cool. All right. So at least I want to shift us a little bit. So, a couple of people have kind of brought it up tangentially, but, this is a tough time of year. I would equate this like right around March when people start to get really goofy, right? And holidays do lots of weird things to people. So how do you, it can be hard, I think, to maintain the boundary, between your personal life and, how do you protect your energy and not, kind of push off the burnout? Like, what are people doing, especially this time of year to work-life balance is a myth, but what are you doing to at least try?
For me, Mike, I try to maintain my hobbies and my interests. So I'm a drummer. I play drums since I'm 10 years old. I play a little guitar. I'm a runner. I like to exercise and things like that. So I try to make sure that the personal side of that is being taken care of, because that's food for my brain. And I get a little nutty if I'm not taking care of myself. So that I know about myself. So I have to be very intentional about stuff like that. Saturday night is date night. Come hell or high water, Saturday night is date night. Phone gets left behind, and Saturday night's date night. So being engaged, staying present, because my wife's an administrator too. So we both get each other's lives, but we also recognize the importance of maintaining connection and socializing with friends and just being present with each other and so on and so forth. So I think it seems to have gotten harder and harder the longer we've done this. I think when we were younger, I don't even think it was an energy thing. I think it was just the level of difficulty and challenge and stress and expectation of the job has evolved. And, when we all started, our jobs, we weren't carrying these things around. We weren't on 24 hours a day. When we went home. There wasn't that innate separation. And now there's an expectation that you are accessible all the time. And so even though you try not to allow that to seep into the after hours or the weekends or even the vacations, it somehow finds its way, because we have a sense of responsibility. We have a sense of needing to be available. And so I think we have to be more intentional about establishing those boundaries and ensuring that we are in fact taking care of ourselves, because I think we've all heard one too many stories of people who work their entire careers and then they were sick or they passed away very shortly after they retired. And that's not why we did this. This is not why we do this work. We sacrifice a tremendous amount of our own personal life and our family and so on and so forth to take care of other people's families. We sacrifice our family time to go to your family's, your child event and to recognize and celebrate and all the things. But then there does need to be that time for us, and there does need to be the next chapter for us. So to allow the position or the job or the stress to take that kind of toll on me is a concern. And so I think just trying to be really intentional about the personal and mental health of ourselves, of each other, is probably more important now than it ever was.
Dan, so much gold in there. I don't even know where to start. So I think the intentionality is a big piece of it, which then allows you, like you have, to create a habit. So if there isn't a choice about what's going on Saturday, we know what's happening, right? And I feel like too, with the intentionality, sometimes we can use these things that are chaining us to our jobs, against themselves. Like, so for me, I'm in Albany during the week in an apartment, and I don't know if anybody noticed this, but I'm sort of social, and I derive my energy from being around other human beings. So I was noticing that I kind of wasn't doing much at night, and I'm like, you can only work so much. And so I have a group of friends that we had gotten together for dinner like a couple times. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I put a repeating calendar invitation on for like the second Monday of every month to have dinner with this group of 5 people. And they all can't come every time, but it sort of forces the issue, because, I think the days, especially with the way our calendars look, the days of being spontaneous, I mean, those are few and far between. Like, you want to get together with friends, like you got to plan it like a month out sometimes. And it's funny because at the time I feel like I don't want to be doing that. I don't want us to plan this far ahead. But then when it gets to the day and it actually happens, I'm like, all right, okay, this works. Anybody else have an approach for trying to achieve some semblance of a balance?
I think I echo a little bit about having those sort of rituals or creating a habit. So as soon as I come home, I know I'm going to work out. That's it. I'm just going to get my workout in, and then I feel good. I feel like I've gotten that that exercise that I need, and all of the great things that come along with exercising. But another thing that I wanted to mention for me is having a work parking lot, writing down before I leave, like, what are my tasks for the next day, so that now I can set it aside. I don't have to come home and continue to perseverate and think about it. It's still going to be there tomorrow when I get into the office. So I think that work parking lot really was very helpful for me.
Absolutely. Anybody mess around with journaling at all? Michelle, that made me think about that, because sometimes I'll use my journal to sometimes write down those things to get them off, like you said, get them off your monkey mind so you can actually calm down. Does anybody mess around with that?
Oh, I do a bit of journaling. I do quite a bit of writing. I have a Sunday routine where every Sunday morning, I live in the capital region. I drive down to Troy. There's a bunch of coffee shops down there. I plant myself in my favorite coffee shop at about 7 o'clock in the morning before everybody else is up and going. I was for about 2 hours. I have a Substack that I have subscribers to, that I kind of put out a newsletter every week called Beyond Our Walls. And I write about lots of stuff. Stuff that's going on at work, stuff that's going on in my personal life, linking the two together, talking about leadership. And so I guess it's not necessarily like a complete separation from work, but it helps me to use work in another medium to kind of express what's going on in my life, in the world, and make sense of things.
Yeah, let me ask you something, Tim. Do you ever go back and like take some time and read what you've written before? Do you ever go
Not
back
really. No, I don't.
that's
I
an
don't.
experience. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared to always go back and read what I wrote. I leave that to other people since I, have a tendency to do it publicly. Obviously, it's nothing like life shattering or anything like that, but it just, I think is a nice process. You get feedback from other people that might be going through similar things or experiencing similar things. It harkens back to the days of like blogging, right? And blogging is new and everybody can blog and a website. Which, Substack is just a really kind of easy medium to use, and people can read my stuff if they want. They don't have to. Send them an email, not a website. But it's really for me, mostly for me, to share things I'm doing. And I've always been somebody who's enjoyed writing, and so I think writing for me is the best way for me to calm myself after a long week.
I love it. Other strategies?
I was going to say that, I was reminded a couple of weeks ago, it's Fred Engelhardt from City School District of Albany. I'm the Director of Grants and Program Development. As a principal, I was much better at actually scheduling like sacred time. And then I somehow got away from that. And I look at my calendar and feel like it has to be filled. So I purposely will put in blocks of time that are sacred. And that has been helping a little bit from a work perspective. The other thing is, like many of us, we have open door policy and literal open door, like our doors are open. And when it's closed, you kind of almost feel bad that it's closed because you're an open door policy person. So it has to be open. So just the little like tweak of it's half open. It sounds weird, but it's like, okay, it makes people stop to say, okay, is he available? Yep, he's available. But it just kind of lets other people kind of recognize, all right, he may be dealing with other things right now, but it still at least communicates that, if it's important, Fred's available to discuss. So that has been something that's like a little bit of a game changer, because when it's open, people come in and I get interrupted all the time. When it's closed, then it's quiet, but I might not get to the stuff that might be a little moderately level emergency things, but that halfway door has been a game changer. So it's kind of cool.
So Fred, let me pull on that a little bit because it was kind of leading into where I was headed next. And is there anything folks have stopped doing that has made your work or life better? So stopping the completely open door, I guess, would be the first one in that category. But has anybody said, I'm not getting any value from this, or I could be using my time in a different way? Anything that anybody's been able to stop doing? Because we always add things, like that's easy, but like stopping the stuff can be a challenge.
I just would add briefly, I have one staff member who probably steps in 7 times a day. And I've told her, you get one time and I will see you again tomorrow because I'll be here with an open door policy tomorrow. But 7's too many.
That's like the kid in the class who won't stop raising his hand and you give him like 3 tokens. Okay. You get to raise your hand 3 times, buddy. Yep. I love it. But I think even having, that's a whole separate, probably hour-long workshop that we could do about sort of setting and communicating norms related to that. Lori, you guys have done really cool work around communication and your tools for communication and setting standards and expectations around that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Has that helped?
We need reminding. So our communication thing that Mike's talking about, Dale Brial, our DS, made an agency-wide move where every time you get an email, you have to have certain things in the subject line that are going to target you towards an action, or just if it's information, or if there's just a coordination thing that needs to happen. He's also been very strict's not the right word, but when you get an email, just sending a thank you doesn't always need to be an email. Our staff was trained on using the reactions that come with if you're Microsoft user. That is really hard not to say thank you to somebody because we've all want to be gracious, but it's a purposeful not trying to. All of our inboxes are overloaded. So, that's probably what we hear has been the hardest thing, right? Where do you draw the line when you say thank you or send a reaction in Microsoft? So he's done a ton of work around that initiative. And actually, we just circled back to it a couple months ago. And him saying, I'm going to stop replying. If you do not use these things in your email, I am assuming you did not mean that email to come to me. So again, it's creating a new habit. So we'll see where that goes.
That's very cool. I think at some point, I would love for you to share that with a wider group if you guys haven't already, because it's solid work.
I think
anybody-
actually pitching that for an event.
Oh, good idea. Yeah,
Maybe a sprint, something.
that would be a good one for a sprint. Yeah. So
I just want to say, Lori,
Yes.
thank you for sharing that, because all of these ideas I'm furiously writing away here. And I was thinking about something that we instituted a while ago, was an email and text moratorium right before holidays. And it took some practice and reminders. And we have begun to say after a certain time, like after 5 p.m., because people would say, well, it's still that day or whatever. And we then went to more specifics, as you're saying, like we haven't done it yet, but I'm interested in maybe speaking to you more about the subject lines and just some parameters that people almost like need permission. And then sometimes it's anxiety provoking for people. What do you mean I can't email or I can't text? Well, I can always call if there's an emergency, but this is time for us to, step away. And once they get into it, though, it's really very liberating for them. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback, but it was a long time sort of catching. And it sounds like you're having the same thing. It takes a while to catch. And then when people do, it really does result in precious time that they get back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Lynn. And part of that communication I didn't mention is that piece. We have all been very cognizant of people should have an end of day.
Yeah.
If you as the leader, I know our end of day is more blurred, but if you preach this to your staff that you want to respect their boundary and their end of the day, don't send them an email at 8:00 at night. Use your schedule send. If there is something that needs to happen in that moment, you pick up the phone, and everybody has a cell phone now, right? So yeah, that has been something. But that's hard on the leader's part, because a lot of us do work after the hours. That's when we're doing our work. But now it is a change in us. You can't say we respect it, but then do the opposite, right? So
well, it's just like the vacation thing, right? Like, oh, we want people to take vacation. Why don't you take some time out? Oh wait, no, don't do it here though. You don't do it at this time. But yeah,
Right.
like, go ahead. So
no,
I
what we
think
do with our own kids, do what I say, right?
absolutely.
Not what I model. Yeah.
Well, and I think the modeling is a huge piece, but it's also making the culture, the way we do things around here explicit, especially, like, no offense, everybody, but as I look at the faces on this call, we're all of a similar ilk when it comes to our time in this business, I'm guessing, right? And so as the new folks come in to the system, my 23-year-old daughter is in her second year as a third grade teacher. And does she know all the norms of her school and communication? Has anybody taught her, or does she just have to figure it out like we had to? And the problem is, when we were figuring out, there were fewer things to figure out. Now there's more stuff. And if we're not teaching them explicitly the way we want things to be around here, then how can we expect it to be the way we want it to be? I guess. I don't know. I'm on my soapbox. Sorry, somebody else talks.
No, I think that's really true. And I think it was was it Dan who talked about the boundaries he sets for himself? I think in the beginning of administration, especially, probably even teaching, you feel like the more you do, the better it's going to be. But generally, the longer you do that, nobody's coming around thanking you oftentimes or patting you on the back for going to every sport event as the high school principal or every concert. But you have to set it for yourself. And how do you get, like, your daughter or the younger people to get more comfortable in setting those boundaries? I do think the other generation coming up is definitely better than we used to be, because I'm hearing that when we're hiring people, when people show up and say, well, these hours really don't work for me. this is what I need. I never was, I'm like, what is happening? So, but I think it's important.
Well, and Lynn, you had a great speaker at the New York State Association of Personnel Administrators conference about generations in the workplace who had written a book about that. I think that's work that not only is it fun to complain about the younger generation, but I think it also is helpful to be thinking about all of our employees and what we can do to sort of meet everybody's needs. Do you have, I bet, Lynn, you're looking feverishly for the book title to put it in the chat, I hope.
I absolutely will. Yep, working on it.
But yeah, I think even just making the implicit explicit so that people have a fighting chance, I guess. Has anybody else messed around with that? Like having explicit conversations with staff about things like this? Like, I don't ever remember a supervisor when I was a teacher or principal, assistant principal, having a conversation with me about maintaining a work-life balance. But has anybody done that or incorporated that into PD?
I do that at new teacher orientation. At the end of new teacher orientation, we have teachers that were new the year before, and we do a panel discussion. And that's part of the questions. How do you maintain that balance when you're a new teacher? So definitely, we've had some great some great feedback on that part of new teacher orientation. They really like hearing some advice from people who have lived through it.
And then, like we said before, right? And then does it really actually happen in practice? If we say that we value work-life balance, are we giving you a hard time when you have to run out to take your kid to the doctor or something? I mean, and then it gets complex about the big system. But I think even being willing to have the conversation and to be thinking about it tells me that we're probably further ahead than we might have been a few years ago. So we're getting close. We have about 5 minutes left. I can't believe how quickly the time went. I feel like we just had this conversation all day long. But kind of as we're wrapping up, any thoughts, especially from folks we haven't heard from, anything that kind of piqued your interest or makes you think, oh, we should dig deeper into this?
Mike, my name's Janine. I'm from Glens Falls. This is my first time in a district role as a leader. I recently finished Plattsburgh's leadership, program for district and building level. This is one of the biggest things that we heard through our entire coursework was building that life and work balance. So I think when you said like we're a little bit farther than we were a couple of years, it's because all of the leaders that some on this call continue to share with new leaders that building that. So there's more of us that are putting that into practice and having those conversations with our staff because of the veteran leaders that are out there that are teaching us younger leaders coming up. So there are a couple on this call that I know I've had conversations with during classwork that no matter how much we try and, keep reiterating, like you said, that schedule. And half the time I had to change my delay on send because I keep forgetting to hit that delay send. So know that veteran leaders are continuing to share that with the new leaders coming up.
Janine, I can't think of a better, more hopeful way to end this conversation than with what you just said. So thank you. Thank you to everybody for participating. And I appreciate your willingness to allow this to turn into a podcast. Who knows how well it'll go, but once it gets up, we'll share it out with everybody. And just thank you. Thank you for taking time. We evidence from this call, we know how busy everybody is. So I really appreciate you taking time to have the conversation and to participate as we try to help one another. I mean, we're all in this together, right?
Thank you so much, Mike. And Fran, thank you for hosting, Mike, for facilitating. We have another Coffee and Cabinet Conversations coming up in February, so be on the lookout for that. Spread the good word with others in your region, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all in person at the Winter Institute. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lynn.
Happy holidays.
All right, happy holidays.